Welcome to Back in Crime, a podcast presented by Texas Crime Travelers. I'm Stewart Fillmore, retired FBI agent.
And I'm Todd Hiles, retired Secret Service agent. In this podcast, we cover cases we worked and some we wish we had.
As lifelong street agents, we were where the rubber met the road.
While the big guys were doing press conferences, we were interviewing the criminals.
And because of that, we can take you inside these cases
and under the crime scene tape.
This is Back in Crime. Welcome back to part 2 of the Deadly Actress episode on Back in Crime.
If you're listening to this and might not have heard part 1, go back and listen to part 1 before we continue.
Yeah, check it out.
You know what, Stuart? Let's wait. They'll let us know when they're done, and we'll continue with part 2.
Okay, hey, yeah. We don't want to be rude.
Hey, we're getting a thumbs up from our producer, so let's go with part 2. Here we go. So this is really the second day of this investigation.
Yes.
And in part 2, we're going to cover everything from day 2 of this investigation to the end of the case. But here's a recap from part 1, which was really the first day of the investigation. And so, Stuart, you and I are working this case that involves 3 letters being mailed to then the mayor of Bloomberg of New York, an anti-gun group in Washington, D.C., and to President Obama in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And each of these letters are threatening, and they each contain ricin.
Ricin, a deadly toxic substance.
And because the letter was mailed to the president, I, as a Secret Service agent, I'm involved in this case, along with the FBI and the U.S. Postal Service.
Mm-hmm.
Shannon Richardson, an actress, has come forward to law enforcement to claim her husband, Nathan, was the author of these letters.
Right.
And the two were living in New Boston, Texas at the time. Agents have interviewed Nathan. He has no knowledge of these letters.
Mm-hmm.
He has no knowledge of ricin. In fact, he doesn't even know who Mayor Bloomberg is.
Yes.
So you and I, on the evening of day 1, we've interviewed Shannon, and she points her finger at her husband, and we've seized a computer from the house.
Seized the computer. We've interviewed her. We have suspicions that she is not telling us the truth, and that very well that maybe she's involved in this thing.
Right. So on the morning of day 2, we head back to New Boston, Texas, and we're waiting for the hazmat team to clear the house, to make it safe, so we can enter the house again.
Yeah. The house that we had been in for 4 hours.
Right. So Shannon, she's at a nearby hotel with her kids, but she's under surveillance. And Nathan, he's at a residence just outside of New Boston, and again, he's under surveillance.
Right.
And if you remember from part 1, when we left off, shots were fired near the residence where Nathan is at during the night.
Yeah.
While he's under surveillance.
Very intriguing.
Between day 1 and day 2 of this investigation, we have probably slept for less than 4 hours.
Well, that first night I didn't sleep at all because, remember, I had guard duty. After the interview, myself and another FBI agent were assigned to just watch the house.
To make sure no one went into it until the hazmat team cleared it. So the chatter on morning 2 around the FBI office, and again, you're at the residence, so you're missing this chatter, but the chatter around there is that somebody was firing a gun at the surveillance team that was out there. So now it's morning, agents go out, they canvass that area out there, and they locate a man who lives nearby, and that he was just shooting at some coyotes that were on his land that night. He had no idea FBI agents were out there, didn't know cars were parked out there.
Yeah.
So it's...
which is very believable, considering where we were in Texas.
Right. So over these next few days, there's more questioning of Shannon and Nathan. I think each are given a polygraph examination, and we start interviewing coworkers, neighbors, family, trying to paint a picture to see
exactly
what's going on here.
Yeah.
And remember from part 1, on our first day of questioning Shannon, she tells us that she remembers Nathan was wearing these big gloves when he put some envelopes in their mailbox. As to mail these.
Presumably to mail these things that go out to New York and to Washington.
And we find out, or we locate the U.S. postal person who is their mailman, or their mail person in that neighborhood. That mail person is questioned, and they deny that they've ever picked up mail from that mailbox. And they acted like they would have known that they picked up some letters there that would have been mailed to the White House, things like that.
Right.
Again,
So that again, one other little thing that doesn't match her story.
And at this time, some of the computer forensics is still being examined, but information to us is trickling in from the Washington D.C.
Yeah.
And one of them indicates that a credit card was used to purchase the castor beans and some other items. I think there were some syringes that were also purchased at the same time.
Right.
And again,
That would be consistent with maybe some of the equipment and stuff you needed
to manufacture
to do this stuff. Yeah.
Right. And whose name do you think is on the credit card? Who bought these?
One Shannon Richardson.
Incorrect. The credit card is the name of Nathan Richardson.
Yes.
So Nathan is questioned regarding this credit card, and he's unaware that he even has this credit card in his name.
Yeah.
He does remember recently he was notified by a credit card company that he had an outstanding balance on the card. But he just says, hey, I reported to the credit card company it was fraud.
Yeah.
I did not use that card.
I didn't
never
apply
opened
for
it
this
up.
thing. I don't know what it is.
We subpoena the credit card company to get all the past transactions associated with the credit card, and Nathan denies using that credit card at the businesses where the purchases were made.
Right.
But it's a paper trail. We can get information, dates and times when things were purchased, what exactly was purchased from those businesses.
Maybe some video footage of maybe who actually made the charge.
Store surveillance video. Again, more and more forensics from the computer is trickling into us with dates and times when the actual castor beans were ordered online. We take these dates and times of when it was ordered and we verify to determine what was Nathan's whereabouts.
Yes.
At that time. On one of these dates and times that there was a lot of purchases, Nathan claims that he was at work.
Which is fairly easy to
verify,
to corroborate.
Right. And his employer, again, has a very detailed record of dates and times when people come on to the property.
Yeah.
And sure enough, the day he claimed to have worked, his employment records indicate that he had the day off.
Yep.
So now Nathan, again, he's questioned about this. Why would you tell us you were working this day when in fact you weren't working? And I think during that interview, he came up with this idea or this claim that, now I remember where I was that day. He said he went to visit a patient at a hospital.
Yeah.
And he said, in fact, I spent all day at the hospital and spent the night at the hospital visiting this patient, so he was not home using his computer at this time. And we go out and we interview the nurses at the hospital. They say he was there that day, but they can't verify the entire time period.
Yeah, the entire time, that he spent the night and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So fortunately for us, there is video surveillance
At
of
the hospital.
all the doors at the hospital.
Yeah.
But the bad thing about it was it's 24
It's a lot
hours of video.
It's a lot of analysis of that.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, there's cameras on all the doors.
Yeah.
So now we have several cameras.
24 hours of several doors to watch. Yeah.
Right. And we have to see when he gets there and to make sure he didn't slip out during the time.
Right.
Was he really there, spent the night like he said that he did? And again, we start looking at all this stuff. If he's at the hospital or if he's at the residence, making these online purchases with the credit card that he didn't know existed. And, a great shout out to, I think there was one agent who that was his job to sit there and watch all that video. And I can't believe that he did it. Spent all the time watching just hundreds and hundreds of people enter and exit outdoors. And it was almost like it was a stationary video of the doors. And he's just sitting there watching, waiting to see Nathan come in and Nathan leave. And sure enough, verified that entire time, Nathan was at the hospital.
In the hospital, right.
That he never left the hospital. Therefore, he was not at his house on the computer, ordering the items to make the ricin.
Right.
Another unique thing that came back from the forensics was that the online orders are shipped to a P.O. box in New Boston. And this P.O. box, of course, is inside the post office, what's there in New Boston. Sure. I know the employees of the post office, they're interviewed, and they tell us that Shannon herself had opened that P.O. box in Nathan's name.
And what was the reason?
She said that she was an actress and that she gets so much fan mail that she didn't want anything in her name. She wanted it only in her husband's name.
Right. She was inundated with fan mail.
And didn't want the fan mail coming to the house.
Right.
And she didn't want her name on the P.O. box, which is kind of...
That doesn't make sense, does it?
No. But it's kind of unique that the post office allowed her to open a P.O. box in her husband's name.
Yeah.
Without him being present or with him without signing for something. Again...
But she was a famous actress, so they let that slide, I guess.
And I want to say...
And please understand, I'm being sarcastic when I say she's a famous actress.
And I want to say that Nathan doesn't even know anything about this P.O. box.
Right.
He had no idea that it existed, and this is the P.O. box that the credit card is being sent to.
Yeah.
The bill is being sent to that P.O. box. Further, questioning of the employees at the P.O. box, and they tell us that Shannon's the only one that checks on the box.
Right.
That comes to the box.
Yeah, they see her come in. They never see Nathan come in.
They've never seen Nathan. So around this time, more questioning of Shannon, and this time we start to confront her now in these interviews about the forensic results. And so now her story changes once again to where Nathan manufactures the ricin, but that she mailed the letters.
Yeah.
That she had dropped them off at the P.O. box, and because Nathan had instructed her to do that. Now, if you're listening and paying attention, you're going to learn that Shannon's story is constantly changing.
Constantly.
And each time we use facts to disprove whatever she's now claiming.
Yes.
And the facts, will eventually lead us to obtaining an arrest warrant for Shannon.
For Shannon, yeah.
So after several days of accusing Nathan of this, Shannon is taken into custody.
Yep.
And I want to say it was like early June.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly when it was. I mean, but obviously, this is not a couple days after you and I interviewed her. This took a little bit of work to get to this point.
I'm going to say at least maybe 7-8 days.
Yeah.
Of working on that. And I want to say must have been around towards the end of June after she's been arrested. Mm-hmm. She actually is indicted in a 3-count indictment for mailing ricin letters.
Right.
In November of 2013, Shannon reaches a plea agreement on all 3 counts.
Right.
And on December 10th of 2013, she pleads guilty to the single charge of manufacturing and the possession of a biological weapon.
And I never collected that bet from her.
You never. In July of 2014, she's sentenced to 18 years in prison.
Yeah.
And the case is closed.
But one of the things, Todd, that was interesting that is how just brutal she was in trying to set her own husband up. Because didn't one of the letters say something to the effect of, if you come and try to take my guns away, we're going to have a shootout or something, to where it implied that any cops that would show up, they're going to be in a gunfight.
Right.
So almost as if she's trying to set up where he's going to be shot by the police.
It was almost like if she wanted to get rid of Nathan.
Yeah.
And I think there was always talk that the sending ricin letters off and accusing him of sending that might have been Plan B, where plan A might have been to where she orders the ricin in an attempt to maybe poison Nathan,
him.
to poison him.
Yeah.
And maybe she tried, and he just got sick or didn't get sick off of it, and so then she switched to this idea that I'm going to frame him for that. Again,
And I don't know if this was ever linked to Shannon or not, but I know that when the hazmat team got there the next day, somebody pointed out that there were some plants that had been planted at the house that were also poisonous of some kind. I don't remember what kind they were, but it was pointed out that there's also some poison plants here.
right.
Yeah.
And I don't think that she ever thought that this would ever play out where she ended up in federal prison.
Oh, no, that was not the plan at all.
I think as an actress, she wrote this script to frame her husband.
Mm-hmm. And I think she thought she had done the perfect crime.
And she hoped that everybody would just follow the script and that no one would go off the script.
Yes.
I don't think she never planned, to be questioned about like the sticky notes.
Exactly.
And that's why I think
just little things like, well, how do you get 3 addresses? It's going to be kind of hard to get 3 addresses on one sticky note unless you write really, really, really small. And so she didn't think of that when she wrote the script. And then, so then when these little things come along, she has to change that. Well, look, no one's perfect, and everybody is going to, well, maybe it was 3 notes, that could be an honest mistake. But when all those little changes to her story start adding up, that's when you start getting somewhere. That's when you realize she's not telling us the truth.
Right.
And then on the flip side of that, whereas Nathan, he all the little things that he says along the way end up checking out in his favor. So, again, this is not rocket science. This is not anything that complicated. It's just a little bit of instinct, a little bit of paying attention to the details of these things, and just doing the legwork of going out, talking to the people at the post office, and because that's really what kind of broke it, I think.
Right.
Was the post office.
Yeah, that he'd never been
been there.
Been to the P.O. box, didn't know anything about it, and that she opened it up. And again, that the P.O. box is where the bill from the credit card comes, and that credit card was used.
That's when the whole story just falls apart.
And all the items used to make the ricin were all sent to the P.O. box.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know anything about the P.O. box. And again, I don't think she ever thought that the Secret Service or even the FBI would ever be involved in this.
Yeah, because what does she say to you when you first talk to her? Oh,
it goes back to that first night in the driveway.
We don't need the Secret Service involved in this.
It was unnecessary for the Secret Service to be involved in this.
That's not part of the script.
Yeah, it's like, hey guys, stay on script here. Just go arrest my husband now for this. I know we didn't talk about this in part 1, but that first night that we interview her and we're sitting at her kitchen table, she talks to us about the spaghetti incident. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I do. Now that you mentioned that, I do remember her bringing up about the spaghetti. Yeah,
she tells us that she thinks that he tried to poison her.
Yeah.
One night by putting something in her spaghetti.
Yeah.
And as as the family's getting down, ready to eat, the table's set, the plates are all set on the table. At the last second, she asks Nathan to take one of the kids to the bathroom to wash their hands. Mm-hmm. And while Nathan is out of the room, she picks up the spaghetti that's in front of Nathan's seating area, and she switches with her.
Yeah.
And she says later that night, Nathan gets sick.
Yeah.
And so she said, hey, he must have poisoned it because he wanted me to get sick.
Had to, yeah.
And I know when the agents were interviewing Nathan that night, that was one thing that we asked him. We said, hey, tell us about the spaghetti dinner. And Nathan recalls, yeah, that was strange. About halfway through, I got sick and, had to leave. I couldn't eat any more of it, and I got sick off of it. Mm-hmm. But I know, again, that looks great in a TV show or a TV movie.
Right.
But when we asked Shannon, wait a second. If he's trying to poison you and you did the old plate switcheroo, now he knows that you know that he's trying to kill you.
Yes.
And
exactly.
Why
That's
would
where it doesn't work?
Yeah, it doesn't work. Like, why would he make you live for 3 more weeks or whatever it was?
Yes.
Knowing that was in there. So, and really the sad part about all this is I know they made her, to sound so evil, but I just think that I don't know if I would paint her with that stroke and call her evil.
Yeah.
I think that this relationship with Nathan was over, and she was just ready to move on, and so I don't know why she had to frame him for some federal
Why
offense.
not just get a divorce? You'd
I
already
think,
done it before.
right?
Yeah. Why this elaborate scheme to get out of this marriage?
It
that could honestly could have resulted in him getting killed. She effectively was trying to swat him.
Right.
Setting this up. Or someone getting sick, because these were real castor beans that she had, which handled improperly can be deadly.
And there was an insurance policy that they had recently taken out, and knew that if he had some type of a death, she was going to get a substantial amount of money.
Yeah.
But I really think after talking to Nathan, and of course we talked to her a bunch, I think if they would have sat down at that same kitchen table and she would have just said, Nathan, hey, this is over with, I'm leaving, I don't think he would have had a problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, I never actually talked to Nathan in the course of this case, so I didn't. I'm just relying on what the impression of other agents. But Nathan just seemed like a guy that thought he was excited and thrilled that he actually was married to a real actress, and that was a big deal for him. And maybe he felt like he was, she was out of his league, so he was really lucky to have her. So maybe he wouldn't even have been that surprised had she decided, hey, I want a divorce. Yeah.
She spent all of his money, and now it was time to move on.
Yeah.
Again, this was a perfect script that she drafted.
Yes.
And
this was a movie that was supposed to play out a certain way.
And the irony here is that this entire case probably would have made a pretty good movie now.
Yeah.
She missed
it does.
She missed her opportunity. So, as a listener of this, if you guys like this, please subscribe, hit that follow button, share with your friends, send comments, questions to us.
So be sure and let us know. Give us some ideas, thoughts of some cases you want to hear about, because we love researching these things. We love looking back into them, these type things. This one we didn't have to do too much because this is something we actually worked on directly. But yeah, give us some ideas about some things you want to hear. We'll look into it. We'll do it for you.
Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening.
Thanks a lot. This has been the Back in Crime podcast presented by Texas Crime Travelers Todd Hiles and Stewart Fillmore. We are the executive producers. Grace Hiles is the producer and director. Theme music composed by edbandas. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and our YouTube channel at Texas Crime Travelers.